observing a condition around the city, most importantly, we want to get it fixed. So these are the kinds of things that we want to advance within our web and new media operations. The last piece of it is really around new media. And James and his team have been developing a regimen by which we are very much endorsing and inviting our city agencies to participate in the social media conversation by having Facebook pages, Flickr, Twitter, these kinds of tools. Many agencies have them, but not all of them do, and these are ways to be more proactive, to be able to tailor messages to interested members of the city, individuals in the city that have particular interest in a particular subject matter. And we're very much encouraging that conversation. Being that we are a government entity, we do have to go through certain standards, and we need to do this in a responsible way and make sure that our users on both ends are using these tools in a responsible way. But it is one that we embrace and that we're encouraging, and we think will, again, sort of advance the interests of engaging government with its public. Government to operate more efficiently, with faster, better, cheaper. And secondarily to that is to be able to embrace and evolve relationships such as these, be able to set up some partnerships and explore opportunities within the business community, the tech startup community, as well as the academic community. And what we're thinking towards are things like internships and externships where we can have an open dialogue and a continuous discussion to foster those kinds of communications where we share our, whether it's data, information, or wealth of experience, and also receive back, because we don't have as the mayor likes to say, we don't have the sort of the license on new ideas. All of the good ideas are sort of often outside of our walls, and we want to be able to open our doors and embrace that through public-private partnerships and partnerships with academia. So these are kind of some of the things you'll see advancing out of our agency, embracing a much more collaborative environment and using that to ultimately serve the public in a better way. Appreciate your time tonight.
John, as folks know, works across many cities, and I think he's going to bring a perspective that's a bit more global, and then hopefully we'll sort of try and mix the two perspectives together.
Thanks, and thanks for hosting me tonight. And good to see so many people that I've met over the last couple of years. It's great to be with you folks. So my name is John Tolba. I work in corporate citizenship at IBM. That's corporate social responsibility by any other name. It's the interface, really, in the corporation between the company and the IBM Foundation. So we make philanthropic grants of services and technology, mostly to nonprofits, and largely around cities these days. So I'll tell you about a little bit of the projects that we're doing there. But I feel like I should explain something that you've probably seen in airports and TV and things like that, the Smarter Planet ads, and what that is, because the work we're doing now partakes wholly of that. So I guess it was late 2007, early 2008, the company, as we occasionally do, make sort of long-term decisions about how we want to position the company. And one of the questions that the senior leadership were asking themselves are, what are the really hard problems? What are the really, or put another way, what are the really big market opportunities that may come around 10 years from now or something like that? And what it turned out to be is that most of them were social or cultural or about, or even about the way people live in the world. They weren't about fixing a bank's auditing system or doing something like that. They were the big problems, like the complex systems of managing a state, the complex systems of managing a human body or fixing a human body. And they all sort of centered around these things that were complex systems. So basically not systems where there were nonlinear relationships between a cause and effect, weather, financial markets, very difficult things like that. So we started recasting our solutions and the way we thought about these things along the lines of systems engineering. What became clear, though, is that that was still sort of an abstract concept to many people. And the city is not an abstract concept. More than half of humanity now lives in cities. That's a trend that doesn't look like it's changing. The city is the locus of many of these complex systems, and the city itself is a complex system. So, you might think that, it's a company full of sort of urban lovers now. That's not the case, but when you recast social and political and infrastructural problems as problems of systems design, you can turn a company of 400,000 nerds into, or you can make it interesting to them, and that's what's really happened. And so I had a shift that was this sort of complete. It's not to say that we don't work on things outside of cities, but I think the idea of an instrumented system, so something that you take data from, either from sensors or from people or from collections, and then do something with that, analyze that, and then feed it back into a system for a positive change, which is what we're trying to do with cities, is something that pervades all of our solutions. It's the idea of a thermostat, which is sort of the simplest feedback mechanism of an environmental piece of data that feeds back in. Scale that up 1 billion times, and you essentially have what our Smarter Cities strategy is. So one of the projects that I'm working on, and my colleague Robin Wilner here is here as well, she's working on it with me, is called City Forward. I've mentioned this to some of you. It actually launches in just a few weeks. And what it is you can think of it as sort of a piece of middleware that sits on top of the underutilized treasure troves of data like we have in New York City, but all around the world. I mean, really, the Federal Open Government Directive of last December, the things like data.gov, things like sfdata.org, the movement towards transparent data has created what you might consider a distributed database of open data around the world, right? So if you think of that as being one big database, and it's just a thorny problem to wrangle all that data, well, that's the problem that we've taken on. So for cities worldwide, right now there's 20 of them, but that's only because we had to pick a number. We will be adding them continually. We've built a web-based tool that aggregates those, normalizes them such as they can be normalized, and then gives you the tools to visualize that data, to analyze that data, so that, which is a major focus of IBM, predictive analytics, statistical analytics, that sort of thing. Online, power this middle layer, which we call City Forward, that lets you do things with it. Now, oftentimes that's simply to visualize it, using traditional infographics or heat maps or that sort of thing. But the kind of high technology piece that we bring to this is the analytics. Running historical trends forward in time to with curves of probability to help inform decisions. We've been doing this in a number of different arenas. This is the first time that we put predictive analytics on the city as a whole. One of the most interesting areas, even in the prototyping that we've been doing, and I'm happy to talk about this and show this, is where systems intersect. The patterns that emerge from seemingly disparate systems. I mean, you mentioned 311 and the popularity that's had here. I mean, that really is the holy grail of data, because it is, in a way, an index of what people care about in the city, how they're using their city, or how they wish to use that city. So a lot of the interesting insight that we've seen bubble out is running 311 data sets against other things, unrelated things, or seemingly unrelated things. But that's the idea. That's the idea behind City Forward. So people say, how are you choosing these cities? And in a way, we're not choosing these cities. These cities self-select by publishing their data already. And I think one of the reasons that we're doing this project is to further the open data movement, right? Because once you see what a Barcelona or a Kansas City is doing with their data and the sort of insight that's being generated by running the analytics on it, this is all free, by the way, I think I mentioned that, there's a tangible reason beyond it simply being politically expedient to be transparent. There's tangible benefit. You can see it online, see the conversation around it. So it's a way of furthering the discussion. So that's what we're working on, and hopefully the conversation can go in a variety of different ways, and I can show something.
Really terrific overview. I want to drill in a little bit with both of you, and then turn it over to the audience. Carol, first, let's go back to the Big Apps competition, which was really the city's first foray into opening up data and trying to engage with the developer community at large. Can you share with us what do you think DoIT really learned from that experience, and what should we expect reprise? Is there going to be another competition? I mean, what are you hoping to do to get more engagement with the data mine? And how can people give you ideas in that?
Thank you. I think there were a lot of lessons learned out of it, and we have a couple of the experts that helped work on that program and were largely responsible for its success here, so I'd certainly invite them to join the conversation. But I think the most significant lesson learned was not to underestimate the interest in data sets that might seem inane or obscure, and that the public has a thirst for interesting and what might not seem like really vital information, but serves obviously a purpose. Some of the most popular applications have to do with not with public safety or not with restaurant ratings or some of the things you might think are obvious and that we clearly invest a lot of time in, and which are important. But, and as Michael LeBeau speaks about often, one of the most popular has to do with identifying the species of trees. And it was a data set that the Parks Department had compiled for reasons necessary to the Parks Department. And we threw it up there as a data set thinking, well, who's going to do anything with that? And in fact, it's one of the more popular apps where you can walk around and identify your location and indicate a tree that you're next to, and the app will reveal what the species of that tree is. And it's wildly popular. So I think that the lesson was not to underestimate what the public is interested in, and that really is kind of the thesis behind this is the data that the city holds stewardship over is really the public's data. And we shouldn't try to direct what is available based on what we think is important. It should all be out there and let the public choose what they think is important to tap into.
Let's go back to the global view. In terms of what you see cities like New York doing with open data, which trends are most exciting to you? What are some of the most innovative things that you've seen done with cities opening up data and in terms of beneficial effects?
Well, I hinted at it. It's all those data. I mean, first of all data sets in the city, unless you're sensing the kind of tensile strength of a bridge girder or something like that, are about the way that people are using it. So in a sense, it's all about people. But the closer that we get to street level, that's why 311 is so compelling to me, because it seems to intersect with so many other things. That's very exciting. 311. Also, some of the most difficult data to get. Or get cleanly is land use data, historical land use data, and there's a lot that's buried in there. So as we see that get opened up, actually some of the European cities are further ahead than we are in that, and Toronto is as well. That gives you a real sense of the fabric of the city and how that's changed. You put that in with transportation data, and you get some interesting things. But I did want to echo what Carol was saying about there are no inane data sets. I actually think that that's where a lot of the insight lays. If not in the raw data, then in the indicators that can come out of, seemingly crazy data sets. Another thing people ask me all the time is, well, tell me what data you want from the city. And it's not being flippant to say, I want all of it. or all those, because a doctor wouldn't say, I don't care about certain symptoms that you're telling me about. Everything's important. Every sign that the body gives off is vital in some way. It just has to be cross-referenced with something else. One of the visualizations that we've done is, we know commute times basically in the New York City area, but we have a set of when people leave their homes by location. And that's really interesting actually, because it doesn't line up in quite the way that you would think based on how long their commute is. Where the insight is there, I don't know yet, but it makes a very interesting visualization. And again, I'm not being flippant there either. It's that there are clearly patterns in these things. And one goal of City Forward is actually to permit city leaders, but also engage citizens to say, this is what I need to make the next jump into researching this problem. Is this just a correlation, or can I go deeper?